It Takes is the worst song in Hazbin Hotel, and I'm going to tell you why. Usually, when I rip into a song, the song at least has one or two redeemable qualities that make it worth proposing ideas on how to fix it. But this song fails on every single level. This is more than just the instrumentation being bland and having nitpicks about meter and syllable count or criticizing bad rhymes, all of which we do and we will continue to do because these things do contribute to the song being complete and utter ass. But that's not why the song completely fails. If you look up the definition of fire on mute, this song would be there, but technical problems can be fixed with enough effort. But this song was infected with one fatal flaw, and because of that, the rot goes so deep that it's beyond saving, in my opinion, as a professional musical theater performer and songwriter. What this song fails to provide is something that is integral. It is what a musical theater song needs to be in order to succeed. And I'm going to explain what and why. Good day, everyone. It is Calxiyn here, ready to rant on Calxiyn Cares Too Much about something that maybe only I care about, but I'm gonna make you care. Because whether you're an aspiring songwriter or a storyteller, a creative of any kind, or a curious audience member, this video is going to provide a necessary lesson in storytelling and why Hazbin Hotel can be so hit or miss. And thank you to all the patrons and the YouTube members, but we will talk more about them later. Let's get started. Starting with the instrumentation, when I talk about the composition for good songs, I do it section by section, but this song is so boring that I am going to cover it all right now. The best way to describe what this instrumental sounds like to me is that it is giving shovelware game title screen. If you booted up Hannah Montana Spotlight World Tour for the PlayStation 2, this song would be taunting you in the main menu. It's not a crime against music majors, it's inoffensive, but it feels like it's supposed to be background noise in the bland, repetitive way that sometimes video game music can be. Not all video game music, as you guys can see, I like a lot of video games, but the shovelware cheap kind. It actually reminds me of Disney's Wish, where you have Magnifico strumming in his songs but without any substance. And this is where you guys realize that doing At All Costs and Whatever It Takes back to back was really bad for my psyche. No one knew that I was working on this video, but a YouTube comment pointed out under At All Costs that At All Costs is just whatever it takes in a fancy hat, and that's exactly how it feels. At All Costs is the more theatrical monster of the week in Scooby-Doo, and if you take off the mask, whatever it takes is the boring accountant underneath, but it's still the same bad guy. In musical theater, a song is a manifestation of a character's soul, and because of that, the composition should feel entirely unique to that character. For example, within Disney, even though Alan Menken composed Tangled and The Little Mermaid and Beauty and the Beast, there is a distinct difference between the Beast, Ariel, and Rapunzel. You would never get the musical motifs for these characters confused, because not only does the soundscape reflect their current environment, but also their emotional state and their usual personality. The Beast is dark and angst-filled, whereas Rapunzel has its free, folk-like sound with a more contemporary instrument vibe like the guitar, and then Ariel has the whimsy of the bubbles floating to the surface and feeling like you are under the sea. The inevitable beef with every Hazbin Hotel video is that they never do this. Maybe, if we're lucky, characters like Angel and Velvet will have more of a pop sound, which contrasts, say, Charlie, right? But they don't really have their own defined sound or their own leitmotifs. And so right out of the gate, Whatever It Takes already suffers from the same problem that happened with Vaggie being part of Happy Day in Hell, which I also covered if you didn't see it, right? Vaggie is not given her own instrument associations, and so she just ends up being part of Charlie's song in that song. And it's the exact same thing that happens here. Vaggie just gets shoved into Carmilla's song. And I know that some of you are tired of my Disney comparisons, and then some of you think it's unfair for some reason, but just to be fair, when we look at another contemporary musical, such as Epic the Musical, what does Epic have? Every major character has an instrument. Every major character also has a leitmotif, and when these instruments and leitmotifs interact with each other, they are complementary, yet still distinct enough to convey the feelings of the characters on an individual level. Carmilla has her own instrument at the start of Velvet's song, but Vaggie was never established as having anything for herself, and so her and Carmilla are lumped together. And what's even more bizarre in all of this is that Carmilla was assigned a very specific Spanish guitar-like instrument at the beginning of Respectless. And where did it go? It's not here, right? So Carmilla actually got her own instrument, and then it went away. We took a step backwards, and now she has a generic guitar instrument instead. This is actually very similar to At All Costs, which we discussed last week, where the entire song is this generic lullaby, and you can't tell the difference between if it's Magnifico singing or if it's Asha singing in the instrumentation. In that video, I had suggested that Magnifico should have had a more military-sounding instrument catalog, while Asha should have been more free and more folk-like, kind of like Rapunzel, which we mentioned earlier. If Asha, for example, is Orpheus from Hades Town, I feel like that Magnifico should be like Javert from Les Mis, you know what I'm saying? In Vaggie's case specifically, I wish they had used instrumentation that alluded to the fact that she was an angel. What's interesting, like the bare minimum of interesting in terms of talking about a very boring composition, is that there is a glockenspiel that happens here, and that becomes more prominent in Vaggie's part, but it was also presented in Carmilla's part, so again, it doesn't seem like that was a choice to be special or unique to Vaggie. I'll bring this up again later, but basically, just because we can hear it better doesn't mean that it was supposed to be, oh, this represents Vaggie, whereas this represents Carmilla, because it's in Carmilla's part too, it's just mixed so horribly that you can hardly hear it. So Vaggie gets nothing, and we have also taken away the real-world cultural influence that was just in Carmilla's music 5 minutes ago. They didn't give this song music that is influenced by the characters' personalities and actions. They gave the song a sound, and that sound is very generic radio pop rock music. Other than the instrument range being too limited and also a lack of diversity in the composition, the other thing we need to look at is musical theater reactions, of which this song has none. In a musical theater song, the instrumental should be impacted by who is singing and what is being sung. Our go-to example is Ursula. We have this nice instrumentation slide on True Yes, implying that Ursula is being slippery. We even have the church and choir music when she's trying to convince Ariel that she's good, and then we have some nice things going on with the trumpets, as I said in the last video, trumpets representing might, and then the strings representing deceit.
Repented, seen the light, and made a switch to yes. And I help them? Yes, I do. But on the whole, I've been a saint.
And as I already said, yes, this song is a bit more pop rockish, but Epic the Musical is also a little bit like that sometimes, especially with Odysseus and his guitars, right? And yet, Jorge manages to include so many musical reactions and leitmotifs. So I feel like well, this is a different genre, this is more pop rock, that can't get me this time, okay? Because musical theater is not a genre, it's a medium. To me, there is no one type of musical theater style sound. Yes, some people may associate musical theater with things like jazz, but to me, musical theater style sound just means that you are having reactive elements to the characters. And you can have that whether or not you have a full orchestra or just drums, guitar, and piano. And so that's not really an excuse. Speaking of excuses, and don't worry, you guys will understand that in a couple minutes, we open with the piano on Zestial's part, which, granted, is a different way to start the song compared to the rest of it, but it's weird. It's weird to start like this, and also the music doesn't react to what he's saying at all. It feels like the Madame Morrible part at the beginning of Wizard and I, and if you have no idea what I'm talking about, it's probably because you skip it every time. But the most bizarre part to me about Zestial's section is that we don't have this powerful piano build where you would expect one. We have Why Not Let Your Strength Be Known, and vocally there's a build in his voice, but then the piano just doesn't do anything, and that's another thing about this song. I can't decide if the piano didn't do anything, or if it's just mixed so badly that you can't tell, because something I noticed with this song in particular is that Zestial sounds like he's in a karaoke bar, you know what I mean? Like, it sounds like he's singing on stage, and the music's just happening, like, faintly in the background, right? And then, like, later on in the song, the music is so loud that it's actually overshadowing Carmilla and Vaggie at some points. And so, I don't know if it's a case of not being mixed well, but at least in what I can hear, the piano does not do any dynamic, and it's really anticlimactic and just falls flat. very easy to do a, like, why not let your strength be known, da 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 da, right? But then it, like, pulls back weirdly and Carmilla starts singing, and so it's just not well suited at all. Then during Carmilla's part, we have the repetitive strumming that doesn't react to anything she says. And then after that, the song just goes heavy on the drums, and it's kind of, again, just noise. Like, it's just a lot of noise at a very high ceiling. I like the idea of this being a lullaby, but this squanders the potential of that idea. And it's really strange because I can hear some of the lullaby elements in the more violent course, like the glockenspiel or whatever that we can hear better in Vaggie's part. But the song itself doesn't grow or pull back enough to use those elements to the advantage of the story. This would be a good time to show that Carmilla is struggling with the idea of being motherly and gentle to her daughters compared to the violence that it takes to keep them safe. But instead of the lullaby elements feeling prominent, you have to strain to hear those things. And if you have to strain to hear them, they're not contributing to the storytelling, because the average audience member isn't even gonna notice over all of these other heavy instruments. And this is, again, where things are becoming a little scary because it is similar to At All Costs' problem, where I suggested more tension with Magnifico's tyranny versus Asha's gentle, pure heart. Instead, this song goes into a theme of violence for Carmilla without really showcasing musically how caring and loving she is to her daughters. We don't have reactive moments that have a push and pull, and so it feels like the song has no tension. Back to the issue of Vaggie, the reason why I feel so strongly about her getting her own instrument is not just in relation to herself as a character, but also to facilitate a deeper connection with Carmilla. Because if we had an angel-sounding instrument, that instrument could have played when Carmilla is talking about how the angels attacked, and then later on, it could have played during Vaggie's section, and the audience, if we're trying to keep Vaggie's identity a secret, could just think, oh, you know, it's just a transition, it doesn't mean anything. But then in hindsight, we would realize, oh, that's the angel instrument that played when Carmilla mentioned the angel attack, then it's playing for Vaggie's whole section. Oh, this makes so much sense now. I think that we should keep the glockenspiel, but the instrument for Vaggie should not be the glockenspiel. I think it should be a harp or something more similar to that. And when we talk about dynamics, it would have been really easy to have Carmilla pull back on her, keep them safe, and keep this secret line at the end of her course after all the heavy drums and guitar and everything happens, but they just don't do that. We transition to Vaggie's part, and it's really disappointing. And I will die on the hill that a radical instrumentation change was necessary here. This song doesn't even really feel like Carmilla compared to what we heard in Respectless, but even if this, let's say, is also Carmilla's sound, Vaggie needs her own sound developed. She is one of the show's main characters. I would rather have a messy song that at least tried to be dynamic and exciting, that went from whatever's going on with Carmilla to church gospel music with Vaggie, and then blended these instruments together in some sort of rock church experiment, right? Like, I would have taken chaos if it meant that we had these elements that are reflecting the characters, compared to just having a song that is boring. Like, it's just boring. That's the biggest crime of this song, is that it's so fucking boring the audience doesn't even remember that it happened. When I listened to the instrumental part while writing this script, I had a lot of trouble figuring out when Vaggie's part started and when Carmilla's had ended. Like, if I miscounted for even just a second, I was gone. And then when the bridge happens, you can barely tell the difference between that and the course musically as well. The song pretends that it grows in a meaningful way, but when you actually listen to it, it's like stuck at 50% for the entire thing. And when we do return to the course at the very end, it's just the exact same level of instrumentation and dynamics that we heard before. There is no growth, there is no difference in Carmilla's part where she is singing alone, to Vaggie's part where she's singing alone, to when they are singing together, which should be the climax of the song, but nothing happens, and that really sucks. And it makes you wonder, what is the point of this song if they clearly didn't want to take us on any sort of journey? That's the other big thing. An instrumental should be a story in of itself. You should be able to listen to the karaoke version of any musical theater song that is good and be able to understand the emotional arc just through listening to the music. You don't need the lyrics. But this song doesn't take us anywhere. It's very similar to At All Costs in that way, where after you hear Magnifico's part, like, what's the point of sticking around? It's not getting any better than that. They're just gonna repeat the same thing 3 times anyway. We end in the exact same place that we started, not only instrumentally, but also just emotionally. Like, Carmilla doesn't have any big revelations here. She doesn't change from when she sings the chorus the first time to when she sings with Vaggie. And so lyrically, we went through this entire song without any meaningful revelations either. And so, as I'm sure some of you have predicted, the bigger issue is the lyrics. Zestial is skippable, and I don't know what the problem is, but every time there's a character that the song is not really about that character, but they start singing, like Carmilla in Respectless, their structure is just whack. Like, technically, Zestial's part here isn't bad on the basis that it doesn't match anything because it doesn't come back, so it kinda doesn't matter, right? But it also doesn't snap the audience into the song. It's basically just a prelude to the actual song. Because we aren't given any sense of security by the lyricist here, it feels like Zestial is just singing in the shower. It's the exact same thing that happened to Carmilla. Some of the syllable counts and the meter just seem weird, but I feel like that what makes it more disconnected is the instrumentation that I talked about earlier. And that just makes it seem wrong, right? Like, it doesn't seem like the lyrics were written for that instrumentation because the vocal line builds in a way the instrument doesn't. So if you were listening to this and you were like, this is off, but I can't really put my finger on why, it's basically because it's like apples to oranges here. They didn't really combine these two things together very well. If we're talking about fun sounds, I guess we have some fun stuff with what, ways, I, implore, soul, share, slew, strength, and then also soul and old having a little something, but like, it's too bad they didn't put the same effort into the rest of the song and they just wasted their load on Zestial. Load and known do not rhyme though, and we have to talk about it because other than like the weird holds that the singer is doing and like the weird structure and everything, by the way that this is built out, you would expect a big moment here, which is what Why Not Let Your Strength Be Known is supposed to be. But the reason why this doesn't feel effective is because they use something that isn't even a slant rhyme. As Sondheim would put it, a true rhyme snaps in the phrase and makes it feel sharp, like having sharp wit. We cut to the point, right? Whereas a slant rhyme or an imperfect rhyme, he said, dulls the impact of your point, which prevents the lyric from having satisfying payoff. And I think that that is true in this case. I'm not a perfect rhyme purist like some other musical theater people are, but what I do think is that you should use a perfect rhyme when you want to create satisfaction, and you should use an imperfect rhyme when you want to create tension. But in this case, when we hear load, especially with like the suspension or tension that it has, we expect for that tension to be released when Zestial makes his point, like when known comes in, but it's not. Instead, it falls really flat and it doesn't feel like the climactic moment that it's supposed to be. The audience is left without that payoff and satisfaction. So I tried every avenue to fix this, and I was really pulling my hair out, but if you're interested in a possible fix, I feel like that this would be the only way, and I am gonna try to sing it, even though the Zestial part is really low. I implore you to share what ails you, what weighs on your soul, old friend. If it was thou who slew the angel, with your strength the war would end. Or whatever he does. I'm like, get me out of here as fast as possible. But anyway, obviously that may change what Zestial said a little bit, since he seems to be focused on Carmilla's strength as an individual versus using her strength to end the war. But like, why does it even matter? When the fighting happens, we don't see Zestial at all anyway. Like, he never comes back in a meaningful capacity. So like, who cares? Who gives a fuck about his characterization? Like, why does it even matter? Sometimes there's no saving a lyric, and it's worth changing, even if it changes the characterization a little bit, especially when that character is completely pointless. And also, like, what would that line mean anyway, if not to stop the war? Are you gonna tell me that what this is implying is that Carmilla should share that she killed the angel just so other people know that she's not someone to fuck with? Because to me, the logical conclusion is that Carmilla would use her strength against the angels in some way, like even in this lyric. So I'm not even sure if my lyric actually changes the meaning. I think it might make what Zestial is trying to say more clear here. Because otherwise what he's asking here is really fucking stupid. Like, at least if you had with your strength the war would end, Carmilla's response can be like, that's exactly why I'm not doing it. If hell knows that an angel can be killed, the angels will come after me personally for revealing this. All of hell will rise to war and fight back. Whereas if Zestial is just asking in this line, why don't you reveal that you're the one who killed the angel for bragging rights? Like, if he's implying let your strength be known in order to grow her reputation within hell, he's stupid. In our real world, whistleblowers get assassinated. So what does he think would happen to Carmilla? Does he think that she could just reveal this information to hell, but the angels would never find out? That's why I'm more inclined to think that Zestial was always implying and suggesting that she should let her strength be known so they can fight against the angels, because otherwise, like, there is no beneficial reason for Carmilla to publicly reveal this information, and then Zestial would just be an idiot if he's suggesting, like, oh, you'll get all the bragging rights, it'll improve your social standing amongst the overlords, they'll know that you're so powerful, right? It won't matter if the angels find out and murder her, dude. So I hope that that's why he said what he said. I hope it was the implication that Carmilla can stop the angels once and for all or whatever. Do you guys remember when I said, speaking of excuses, let's talk about Zestial earlier? This brings us to the excuse. Characters should not need an excuse to start singing in a musical. I don't know if Hazbin Hotel knows this. They seem to be embarrassed to do this, and so they inject these side characters to beckon the character that the song is really about to start singing. Zestial's biggest crime here is not having, like, weird structure and weird holds and weird mysterious lines that we're not sure what they mean because they aren't clear. It is the fact that he's here in the first place. He doesn't need to be here. He doesn't do anything. Imagine if it was Alistair doing this instead of Zestial. Like, imagine how much tighter things would be if instead of Carmilla feeling like this distant third party, a main character actually talked to her, right? Alistair is the one who confronts her about all this, killing the angel. Alistair says, like, I will tell Charlie. Charlie will come around badgering you, so you may as well tell me the truth anyway. I already figured it out. I don't need to reveal my source. Everyone's happy. Obviously, Alistair is connected to the hotel, so Carmilla would be hesitant to trust him, but she doesn't need to trust him. Alistair is manipulative. Have him manipulate her instead. Like, you could have had them make some sort of deal where Alistair says, hey, war is going to happen. Hell is definitely going to go to war. There's no other way out of this. But if you tell me how I can kill the angels, I'll protect your daughters. I promise, like, no harm will come to them if there is an angel attack. And then Alistair gets the information and he just sits on it the whole time. If Alistair made a deal with Carmilla, it would make her feel like she's actually part of the plot. And people may be like, well, Carmilla would never do X, Y, and Z because her and Alistair aren't close like that. Like, and whatever, but like, we all know that Carmilla's not real, right? We all know that characters are just meat puppets that are used to tell a story, right? Like, if you want to do it, you just make it happen and you write it to be believable in the context of the narrative. You can make them have a past friendship. I feel like a villain song with him and Carmilla, like Friends on the Other Side or Poor Unfortunate Souls, would have, like, really slapped, like an I Can Solve Your Problem song if you give me what I want. And that would have been way more fun than whatever this is. You don't even really need to change the I know something you don't know thing that happens later on, because this is 100% in Alistair's character to find something like this out and then not tell Charlie until she is absolutely on her hands and knees and desperate. Like, why have this whole thing about babysitting the eggs when you could have had Alistair have an actual interesting conversation with another person? Alistair is an interesting character. Carmilla, on the other hand, has no character, which segues us into her part. Somebody has it out for Carmilla because her songs never make any fucking sense. Her songs always have these weird, unnecessary holds and stretches that just fuck with the meter. Like, if you look at Vaggie's verse here, Vaggie's verse feels like the correct version of this song. It's very similar to the problem that happens with Vox and Alistair in Stayed Gone. It's 10 times worse with Carmilla every time. Like, even if you thought that this was somehow the pre-chorus, Vaggie's verse is a weird hybrid of whatever Carmilla is doing here. She has the internal rhyme of good and understood, just like how Carmilla has say and fray. But you'll notice that Vaggie has 2 rhymes in a row right here. She has face and place. But if Carmilla was following what Vaggie was doing properly, Carmilla's new over here should actually rhyme with war. So the placement of the rhymes here are completely off. So these verses are not only jarring to hear, but they are, like, uncomfortable to look at. Like, I don't even really need to explain this to you. You can see side by side that they don't line up whatsoever. It's that whole concept of surprising yet inevitable. You don't really want your verses to be the surprise, right? When we move on to a new thing, that's when we make a chorus or a pre-chorus or a bridge, but the verse should not be the surprising part. The audience never gets snapped into the song because there is no security, and it's a clash in our minds to hear the same melody but not the same structure or the rhymes being in the same place, because then we're expecting something that never, but oh, that's wrong, is not the kind of surprise that I want. This feels like someone was just making it up as they went along, and that's why we have songwriting rules in the very first place. It's not like hard, strict rules in order to snuff out your creativity, but they're supposed to be guidelines that help you make a song that people want to listen to and can also follow along with. And the structural issues are very similar to Wish in that sense. In terms of fun sounds, we don't have a lot going on here. Like, we do have attacked, act. If we come down here, takes, mistakes, because mistakes has a little bit of takes in it. We have safe and secret, but it's not as seamless as what happened with Zestial. Because of the language, it feels very forced. When I'm talking about language, attacked and act are a perfect rhyme, but it also feels really forced because act feels very formal. And it's not that that sounds like it's out of the realm of possibility in terms of how Carmilla speaks, but it sounds wrong in relation to her own children. I expect when I saw this injustice against a stranger, I had to act, right? But it feels very distant when you're talking about protecting your own kids, right? Like, that doesn't really convey emotion very well. Act is like duty, not necessarily motherly instinct. What's also annoying is that we use keep them safe up here, and then we also use keep you safe down here, and I feel like that, like, that's not really for any reason. Like, that repetition doesn't feel like it was used to create a contrast or draw two ideas together. It just feels like they couldn't think of another word other than safe. Like in other songs when we have up where they walk, up where they run, up where they stay all day in the sun, right? That repetition builds on an idea. Not only where they walk, not only where they run, but where they spend all day in the sunlight. It's supposed to represent the idea of freedom for Ariel and what she sees as the ultimate freedom, wandering free in the human world, not restrained or confined by her father in the darkness in the ocean. Repetition usually has some sort of symbolic meaning, and I just feel like the keep them safe, keep you safe doesn't have a purpose other than they just couldn't fit another word in there that made sense to them. Which brings us more directly into the lyrical meaning, though. Hazbin Hotel has these weird mashing of phrases together type moments, right? You can have blood on your hands, or you can have egg on your face. You can't have blood on your face. You can have literal blood on your face, but I don't think that they're talking about that. I think that they're talking about it in a metaphorical way, like how egg on your face is supposed to be. And what's super baffling here is that face doesn't even rhyme with anything, right? So it wasn't like they were forced to do it. They wanted to do it. So why do this? What is this supposed to convey? Having egg on your face is supposed to be about maintaining appearances, that you look stupid because of something that you have said or done out of pocket. Like, if you make an assumption about someone and you're wrong, that's egg on your face, right? Like, maybe fighting against the Exorcist is stupid because they will kill her, but egg on your face is about looking stupid, not being stupid, but looking stupid in a social setting. Being exposed as stupid in a social situation. That's not a phrase that we use in a life or death situation. So it reads as very low stakes, like, oh, if she gets caught, it'll just be a little embarrassing for her to have blood on her face. And the issue with the idea of blood on your hands is that Carmilla is a weapons dealer. She doesn't have some sort of moral code against violence. That's not what this is about. That's why this line doesn't make any sense, because she didn't do something that will lead to social scrutiny, and she also didn't do something that she feels guilty about. What she is afraid of is that the angels will come after her for finding out their secret, for protecting her daughters in what was rightful self-defense, because the angels are tyrants. That's not having blood on your hands or egg on your face or blood on your face. Also, I always thought just feels like a filler line, and so that's really weird. And so we just have, first of all, a filler line, something that doesn't mean anything. I always thought that I would keep blood off my face. Is that something that she just regularly thinks about, right? No, it's not something that you thought about. What you probably thought was that you would lie low and never get involved with the angels because people wanting weapons to defend themselves, no matter how ineffective against the angels, is actually good for your business. What you didn't want was to get directly involved, because then they would know that you know what their weakness is. So yeah, these lyrics are stupid. I tried to fix them. Again, I think that they're kind of irredeemable and for a reason I haven't talked about yet, but let's try. This is what I suggested. This is actually too low for me to sing, so here it is down there, and we'll just speak it. We tried to flee. I swore I'd turn a blind eye, but then the fight came to me, but I crossed that line, punished the divine. I'd gladly give my life to keep them safe. And I think that makes more sense, because it's not Carmilla thinking that she would keep blood off her face. It was that she was going to turn a blind eye to what was happening in hell, because getting involved did not benefit her. The only time that she had to step in was when her daughters were directly threatened. The idea that if anyone knew hell would rise to war is a good sentiment, so I wouldn't want to change that, even though, again, it's trapped in this, like, weird structure that's going on. But I might lose the ones that I was killing for is very clunky, because grammatically you could have just said, I might lose the ones I was killing for. You have to be mindful of where stresses are when writing lyrics, and so sometimes lyricists will use a filler word. I could see that being a filler word. However, it doesn't really make it any better, does it? Like, what sounds better when I speak it aloud? I might lose the ones I was killing for, or I might lose the ones that I was killing for, right? Like, it just feels so rushed, and it's baffling because that was completely avoidable. I also have beef with this vocalization here of I'll be your keeper. Like, wait a minute, what happened there? If she was going to say all, shouldn't it be I'll be your keeper? Why do we go from I to I will? Like, what was she going to say? Because this sounds like I am, and then, oh, I changed my mind. I will be something. But the issue is, we don't really know what she would have said if she had continued that sentence versus what she decided on. Basically, guys, she is starting to say I am, and then she changes her mind, and she's like, actually, no, I will. But we don't know why, and I feel like that, like, it doesn't mean anything. We're just in pop music land, because that type of vocalization is a pop music genre convention, and At All Costs actually does the same thing with I will protect you, but they were smart enough to not do a contraction, because I will protect you, at least to me, makes sense, because you didn't go from, like, one form to another form. And so them going right, as this burst of emotion, and then I will protect you, makes a lot more sense than I. Never mind, it's I'll be. We do have some good specificity here with the idea that if everyone knew hell would rise to war, like that's good. However, we're still very vague here because I understand the idea of she will protect her daughters, but we haven't identified what whatever it takes actually means. Think about something like out there from the Hunchback of Notre Dame, right? The thesis of out there as a single phrase is a little vague. Like if you just heard that phrase, you wouldn't really know where we're going or why we're going there, right? But the difference is that Quasimodo sings out there, but it is immediately sandwiched with other things. So when we're saying do whatever it takes, I'll make the mistakes, I don't actually know what we're talking about here. And that to me is the same as like Quasimodo being like, out there, I'll do whatever it takes to go out there because I want to go out there. Like, you know what I mean? That doesn't really help us. That doesn't tell us anything. That doesn't make any sense. Like when Carmilla is saying she will do whatever it takes, that she will make the mistakes, what is she talking about? Like, she's not talking about killing the angel, because that already happened. It's like now in the future, going forward, as I keep the secret, I will do, like, whatever it takes. But keeping the secret is not doing whatever it takes. It should be that she is doing whatever it takes to keep the secret. So what is that? Because doing whatever it takes can be really dramatic or really boring depending on the context, right? Like, I'll do whatever it takes to get an A on my exam this week. Could be just studying, right? It could be getting someone to test you, or it could be literally locking your PlayStation away in a room for which you do not have the key, so the new Natlin update in Genshin Impact won't distract you from your schoolwork. But what does whatever it takes in regards to Carmilla actually mean? Like, is it something as boring as going into hiding? Is it using people as meat shields? Like, is it killing anyone who finds out about this? Imagine how crazy this song would be if Carmilla was like, and now Zestial, because you know, I'm gonna have to kill you. And like, obviously, whatever, she trusts him, they have a, you know, relationship, I don't care. But that would have at least a little bit of gusto if she was like, oh yeah, by the way, now that you know, I'm gonna have to dispose of you because you can't tell anyone. But I need more information here. I will lock my daughters in this house and I will surround them with guards, right? They will never be able to pee alone again, right? If somebody finds out about this, I will murder them or I will buy their silence. If Charlie comes sniffing around here, I will lie, I will cheat, I will track her down and then hit delete. Whatever. Like, I understand what Carmilla wants because this is something like basic. Protecting the people that you love is a very general motivation that usually everybody has, right? We all want to protect something that we love anyway, and that we all understand, right? But there's no other detail or like poetic language that describes all she is willing to do whatever it takes. Here's another thing to consider. Do we give a fuck, right? Do we have empathy for Carmilla? She is willing to keep information that may free all of hell from the angel's tyranny, keep that information to herself just to protect her own daughters, which are two people. They're also two people that we don't know. Are we supposed to feel bad for the weapons dealer who perpetuates a cycle of violence in hell just because she doesn't want to get involved in the violence because someone close to her might get hurt? Never mind all those other people that are already getting hurt that we should care about because we care about Charlie, and that's Charlie's main goal. If Carmilla has already made her decision and she's not conflicted about it whatsoever, there are no stakes here. Like, the stakes would be from Zestial, who doesn't fucking do anything this entire time, being like, Carmilla, that's wrong. I'm gonna try to convince you to change your mind. And like, whether or not that'll work out. Maybe I would care if we didn't just meet Carmilla 5 minutes ago, or if Carmilla was more of a main character like Alistair or something, but I'm sitting here like, yeah, bitch, give Charlie the information. Charlie's not gonna tell anyone. Like, you can do it anonymously and it won't come back to you. Just don't reveal it was you publicly. Just tell her privately so Charlie can save the day and get out of here. I really do not care. And that brings me to the problem that goes beyond technical, mechanical songwriting issues. Like, this is one of the things that cannot easily be fixed. Acting Foundations 101 class, they will ask you what made your character start speaking? What made your character starts singing. In this case, Carmilla starts singing because of Zestial. But Zestial never says anything, right? He is completely useless because this song is not a Zestial and Carmilla song, right? It's a Carmilla and Vaggie song, which means Zestial can never say anything. It's not a conversation, and because of that, Carmilla is never challenged. It's very similar to Magnifico and Asha, where they're both singing in the void and they can't acknowledge or hear each other, apparently. Like in theater, yes, your scene partner can be your other self or God, but you can only talk to God if you have a fucking problem, if you're conflicted about what you're doing. And Carmilla is not conflicted. She's saying so herself. She'll do whatever it takes, right? And Zestial doesn't push back. He's here the whole time. He hears everything. He's just like, okay. He never puts up a fight. He doesn't argue against Carmilla's flawed and selfish point of view, which means we don't get a musical number. We get a pop song that is masquerading as a musical number. Exactly like At All Costs, we fail immediately on the premise of a duet because the person that is most logical for Carmilla to sing a duet to doesn't say anything, and that makes it not musical theater. Carmilla and Vaggie singing in the void makes it a music video. Whatever it takes is the thesis of the song, but the characters do not have anything interesting to say about the idea of whatever it takes. It's just too vague, and they aren't influencing each other about whatever it takes. They're just singing completely in the void. I'm not gonna get too deep in the weeds about this because I've used this example too many times already, but in a duet, you have characters singing together in unison under a thesis, or you can have characters united by disagreement about that same thesis. If you want more information, look at All Costs, but those are basically the two things you can have, but they still need to be on the same page. The problem is that Carmilla and Vaggie are not part of the same book. This is not a duet where the characters are being influenced by each other. This is a song where they are both singing about a very similar thing in the void, and they can't hear each other. Like, this could have been a Carmilla solo song or a Vaggie solo song, and nothing would change because they don't need each other. And if you don't need each other, if you don't need another person, you don't need to sing a duet. The only reason other than that would be a good reason to sing is if we, the audience, need both characters. Like if we're getting information that we need to understand. The problem is that we don't learn anything that we didn't already hear about in the script. Like the entire song is redundant because we already know that Carmilla killed the angel, right? We don't need Zestial to say that. We already know. That's why Zestial starts singing. He's like, okay, I know that you did this. Why are you afraid of telling anyone? Like the only thing we learned, I guess, is why she doesn't want to tell anyone because she wants to protect her kids. But like, I could have put two and two together. You didn't tell me anything. And we also didn't learn anything in Vaggie's part that even makes her part worth staying for. So not only do these characters have no reason to be singing at the same time, they don't give us any information anyway, which means neither of them have to sing. If we can cut a song from a musical, and people can still understand the story, it is a bad musical theater song. But the reason why this song could have been cut and we would have lost nothing is because there is no conflict, there's no emotional journey, no realization, and nothing is explained here that we didn't already know. Like, I could at least give a pass to the singing in the void if we got this deep character insight about especially Vaggie, but quite frankly, I'd even take more about Carmilla, but we don't know anything about either of them. There is no reason to care about Carmilla's deep personal angst in the first place because she is basically the equivalent of an NPC. They only go to her later in the show because they need something for her. She's like, they're finally turning in a quest, you know what I mean? Like in a video game. She's not an actual character, she's a plot device. I at least would have cared more about hearing from Vaggie because she's an actual main character who is allegedly supposed to be part of the main cast, even though the writers don't treat her that way. But for some bizarre reason, it's like they only had one little crumb of characterization, you know what I mean? It's like, it's our last piece of bread, who's gonna get it? And they gave it to Carmilla, who no one cares about, and they left Vaggie with nothing, not even a crumb. Which brings us to Vaggie. Because they wanted to keep Vaggie's backstory a secret so bad, her lyrics are pointless and don't make any sense. Like, there's so much I wish that I could say. Like, why are you not saying it? You're not singing to anyone. Like, it's not like Vaggie is is singing to Charlie and she's hesitant. She is all alone, unlike Carmilla, who has Zestial to cater to. When a character is in a scene with another character, just like how in real life we speak differently with, say, a professor compared to our partner compared to our parents, even if the topic of conversation is identical, we have a different way of speaking because the relationship is different. And so just like real life, you have to consider that in fiction, the character might be influenced by another character's presence. For example, in Hunchback the Musical, we have this song called Rest and Recreation where Phoebus is singing about being a fuckboy, right? He's like, 4 years at the front gives a man a zest for a little rest and recreation. He's talking about fucking, right? Like, he is being a fuckboy to a group of women and also talking about drinking as well, right? Like, he just wants to party. So we have that, but then we hear about why, in his inner thoughts, he needs the rest and recreation because he has been on the battlefield for 4 years, and they describe very, like, vividly and kind of disgustingly how Phoebus is haunted by the smell of rotten bodies in the trench, right? And he is looking down at them and he's like, I lived, bitch. You know, I cannot let this be me. I will never go back there. And like, he's haunted by his comrades' death and everything. So anyway, we have fuckboy Phoebus, and then we have what Phoebus is actually thinking. And so Phoebus has a mask, and you get to see him with that mask, but it's important that the mask comes off because that way he becomes endearing to the audience instead of like this womanizing asshole. You understand why he is womanizing and drinking. He is doing all those things to forget. So you can argue that Vaggie has a mask. She's hiding her true identity from Charlie and the rest of the main cast. But why the fuck is the mask on when Vaggie is singing all by herself? This should be the time where we get to see the purest, most truest form of her thoughts and feelings because she is finally alone. Imagine if Frollo was like, I can't sing about how sinful and lustful I am about Esmeralda because that's supposed to be a secret, teehee. Like, the entire point of a song between a character and their other self or God is, again, that no one can hear you and judge you except for yourself. Like, the conflict comes from within yourself. I've seen some people say, oh my god, the foreshadowing was genius. No, it's stupid. The fact that Vaggie does not mention being an angel here this entire time and goes, oh, haha, I wish I could say more, tee-hee-hee. Like, that's not foreshadowing. This was contrived for the sake of shock value, and in hindsight, it makes this entire song pointless, because imagine how much more value Vaggie's part would have had if we find out that what Vaggie is struggling with is her military upbringing as an angel. She doesn't know anything else. She's never had any friends before, but instead, the script decided to literally run interference on the songwriter's job here, and as a result, it makes the songwriters look incompetent when I don't think that they were. I think that they were not allowed to reveal this information here because of the time and place that this song happens. But it should have been in here. It makes the most sense for it to happen now, when we have an episode focusing on what Vaggie is struggling with. Instead, they make this really contrived conflict with Vaggie and Charlie, and they're like, suddenly, you know, they're having a conversation, and then it's suddenly blown out of proportion, and then they need to make up at the end of the episode, which always felt really stupid to me, but now in hindsight, it's even more dumb, because it was easily explained, or at least it could have been to the audience, if we had known. Like, the reason why Vaggie goes from 0 to 100 really quickly is because she's insecure. She thinks that if Charlie finds out, she won't love her anymore or something. Like, that's why she's like, I'm a failure, I'm supposed to protect you. Like, that could have been a bit more nuanced and had a bit more time to flesh out if we found out, oh, this is why. Instead, it just looked like that they were manic out of nowhere. Anyway, I don't want to get into the weeds about meter anymore. That's why I just put the emojis. Face and place is a perfect rhyme. Good and understood is a perfect rhyme. Armor and partner I actually like as a slant rhyme, which makes the keeper and secret from Carmilla's course even more jarring because it makes Vaggie's part feel like the more correct one by virtue of having like this type of consistency. At least I do appreciate though that they changed this, like, and they made it unique to Vaggie. I appreciate that. But, like, unlike Carmilla, where we at least learn that her concern is that hell will rise to war, we didn't learn anything here about Vaggie, because they didn't want us to learn anything. We already know that Vaggie is Charlie's girlfriend and basically, like, her personal knight, like, she's like her lady-in-waiting / guard, kind of like Cassandra from Tangled. And so, what exactly did this tell us that I didn't know? It felt so good to be understood, like, yeah, I sort of assumed since Charlie's your girlfriend, she made you feel understood, since, like, the basic qualification of any relationship, whether it's romantic or friendship, is that the other person accepts and understands you. You'll be her armor? Yeah, I know. Like, outside of those times where Charlie was in actual danger and you didn't show up for some reason, like, yeah, I know that you're supposed to protect her, thanks. You already do that. You'll spend her life being her partner? Like, okay, I thought I knew that already. You'll make the mistakes? What are the mistakes? I don't know. Like, it's exactly like Carmilla. What does doing whatever it takes even mean for Vaggie? And what kills me, what drives me absolutely crazy, is that they could have used this as such a compelling point of contrast. Like, imagine if Carmilla was like, I will do whatever it takes, which means I will harden my heart and be completely violent to anyone who even questions me about this incident. I will bury it. I will bury them. Whereas Vaggie's whole conflict in this episode is, again, her needing to learn to be softer and less military, right? So whatever it takes for Vaggie should have been, I will be kinder, I will be softer, I will try to see Charlie's point of view, and I will try to believe in her trust exercises or whatever. Whereas with Carmilla, it would be the opposite. You could have had a character with a violent upbringing like Vaggie try to be softer and more communicative and kinder, and then you could have had Carmilla, who apparently didn't want to get involved in the violence, now being violent, and those could have been parallels to each other. But no one says anything of value here. I also have major beef with Stranger in a Brand New Place, and every time I bring it up, people are like, oh, it makes so much sense in hindsight. No, it doesn't. It's a horrible lyric that mashes two different ideas together. Charlie made Vaggie feel like a stranger in a brand new place. These are not bad sentiments on their own, but they needed to be two separate thoughts, and making them one long thought is why it's so bad. In this format, you would expect, despite being an exorcist, Charlie treated me as she does every stranger, with kindness, period. Like the implication that she treated Vaggie not as a soldier, but as a person. Then, she made me see this place that is familiar to me with a brand new point of view. I see hell differently now, period. Hell is not the place they told us it was, period. But stranger in a brand new place does not make any sense, because everyone is always going to be a stranger in a place they have never been to before. And people will argue in circles with you about, like, oh, but the point is that hell used to be familiar to her, and now, like, hell is new, and so she's a stranger in a place that was already familiar. But, like, I wouldn't say that coming to a place once in a while just to murder the people that live there makes you part of or familiar with that place. In At All Costs, when I was talking about the lyric of I'll never dream how I used to do, I used this example of, guys, I'll never make Thanksgiving dessert like I used to do. How do you guys possibly know what that means? It could mean I am never going to make my dessert again because no one appreciated my dessert. It could mean that my dessert was already good, but now I have a way to bring it to a brand new level. It could mean that I realized that my dessert was actually kind of mid, and now I need to make it actually good and redeem myself. It could even mean that I've gone gluten-free and now I need to change the recipe. You can't have an after without referencing what the before was. And the reason why this is worse than At All Costs is because at least Asha's line was just one vague after. But these are two separate, two vague afters that need to be separated in order to make sense. Otherwise, we're going, yeah, everyone's a stranger in a brand new place. Like, that's not special, right? The issue with this phrase is that in terms of, like, poetry or prose, I guess, this format is usually used to suggest things that seem incompatible, but because there is a despite, it ends up making sense. For example, if I say, I've hardly met a single soul, but I am not alone, I feel known, from the light in the piazza, the idea here is that despite not having met a single person, I feel like I belong here. Like, the point in that song is I feel as Clara, right? I feel like the people around here know me as I really am because they don't know that I have a disability. All my life, people at home have treated me as a child, but now here in Italy, they only see me as a young woman, as a tourist. The people in Italy treat me as they would anyone, and therefore they actually know me better than the people like my mother who have been around me all my life. And I haven't even met anyone. The idea here is that you would think that not meeting anyone would make Clara lonely, but Clara subverts it by saying, despite not formally meeting anyone, I am not alone. I feel known by them. And we know that that knownness is in contrast to how she has felt earlier. So the problem with Vaggie's line is that she is implying the equivalent of Charlie made me feel like a stranger despite the fact that I'm in a brand new place. And that doesn't make any sense. You can feel known despite not having formally met the people around you, but you can't feel like a stranger despite the fact that you are in a brand new place. They should have said, Charlie made me feel welcome despite being an outsider, and then Charlie made me see this familiar place that I thought I knew a lot about with brand new eyes. Hell is not what they taught us in Angel School. If she is saying that Charlie made her feel like a stranger despite the fact that Vaggie is not a stranger to hell, because YouTube comments will argue with me that she is not a stranger to hell, it would be a stranger despite a familiar place. If the point is only that Charlie made Vaggie see hell differently, despite hell being familiar, right? We don't need stranger in there. We need something else to illustrate that hell feels brand new to her because she now has a kinder point of view despite what she thought about hell before. But whatever this is not a compatible sentiment. This lyric is stupid. All the lyrics are stupid because we don't learn anything, so I don't care. For some reason, during the bridge, they tried their hardest to make it sound like that Carmilla and Vaggie could not hear each other and had no idea what the other one was doing. Because Carmilla has this line that just falls right off a cliff with replace you so, despite face and replace being the rhyme in there, and then Vaggie has, by comparison, a very clean rhyme with try to come true. Replace you so syndrome happens a lot worse and you didn't know, where entire rhymes just fall right off the cliff and they do not let the ending rhyme actually be the ending. And that's what the problem with this is. And these lyrics are also stupid to me because, as we have discussed in previous videos, this should be the place where there is the most tension. We're supposed to take a step further compared to where we were before. In Out There, for example, we go from Quasimodo just talking about his observations and how much he wants to be among the villagers, to him saying that the villagers do not appreciate their lives and they are heedless of the gift it is to be them. It gives the impression to the audience that he is especially worthy and deserving because he sees the joy in mundane things that other people take for granted. Think about again how poetic other musicals are. And meanwhile, in here we have, I don't know what we might face, but I know I can't replace you so. And I'm like, but you already do. You know what you're facing. You said what you're facing earlier. You're facing The Exorcist. You're facing Hell Rising to War. Like, all of these things are still on the table, lady, whether or not your secret is kept. And that's what makes this especially pointless. Like, that's part of the reason why this song just matters so little. Like, there is no tension in the idea of Carmilla's secret getting out because anyone with media literacy could tell you they were going to war with Hell by the end of the season. I called that in the very first episode during the storybook portion, and my reactions are up on the internet, so you can go fact check if you want, but I already knew that that was gonna happen. And calling a twist in of itself is not a bad thing. It's more so that Carmilla's not necessary to find out that the angels can be killed with angelic weapons. Like, this is something that could naturally happen by grabbing an angel's weapon later in the heat of battle and finding out. So it just didn't matter to me, you know what I mean? Here's another way to put it. A good twist should be predictable. You should be able to see it coming if you pay attention enough to the subtext and background details and stuff like that. Like, a twist should be something that the audience can find if they paid enough attention. And on my second channel, I am notorious for predicting twists before they are revealed in like anime and shows and stuff. And it's not that sucks the fun out of it. What's fun for me is predicting something, and then like the fun and exciting part is seeing how we get there. The problem is that I predicted this was going to happen, but because it was so transparent that it was going to, the season just like drags on because we're waiting for everyone else to get there, and that's not fun. Like, there's nothing exciting or enticing about like, you'll have to keep watching and see if Charlie finds out about Carmilla, because who cares? She doesn't even need Carmilla anyway. It could be information that happens some other way. And then again, we have her talking about how she'll do anything to save her daughters, which is common sense that her daughters are irreplaceable, I'd say. And again, the revelation when we talk about bridges and other songs like Quasimodo is that we are now hearing how he thought that the villagers were ignorant to how precious life is, and that's what drives him and gives him a greater sense of yearning. What does this give us? Information that we already knew? The revelation here is that her kids are irreplaceable, which I guess is a step up from her just wanting to protect them. Like, she wants to protect them because they're irreplaceable, but I think that's kind of common sense that your own children are irreplaceable, right? And then also we have Vaggie doing whatever it takes to make Charlie's dream come true, which is not new information. Like, that's literally her only function in the show. Here's an example to illustrate what would have been better here. If Vaggie had said, despite the fact that I am an angel, and if you find out, you'll probably never forgive me, I will fight to make your dreams come true. Because I don't care if you love me, I am in love with you, I want to make your dreams come true. That is the type of step-up revelation that we need here, not just like, I'll protect you, Charlie, I want to make your dreams come true. It's that even if this doesn't benefit me, I will still do it. Even if you hate me one day, I will still love you because of everything that you have done for me. That is the high emotional climax that would have made this song actually worth it. For Carmilla, I'm not really sure what I would do since she started at such a high 100% and you can't push past that. Like, that's something else you need to think about when you're writing your songs. Your characters need to have somewhere to go. And so if you have Carmilla, like, again, blowing her load at the gate with, oh, we can't tell anyone because then hell will rise to war. Like, that's the biggest, baddest thing that could happen, right? And so, like, we've already played all the cards in our hand right away. Like, they dumped everything compelling about her right at the beginning of the song. She has no personality outside of wanting to protect her family. Like, the only thing I can think of is that they could have said, like, Carmilla is a career woman, you know, she's self-made woman or whatever, and so, like, as a boss-ass bitch, she has had it all. She's had her career and her kids, but you could have had it so, like, she's willing to give up her career and her position as overlord to protect her daughters because she has now realized that some things are more important to her than money or power. There needs to be some sort of step up there, and I think that that would be really interesting now that I'm thinking about it more and going off script, because imagine if this song was instead about when my daughters were threatened, something flashed before my eyes as well, because I realized that I have spent so much time working that I didn't actually spend enough time with them. Like, you could have built on that idea, right? That Carmilla realized, not that she's not been a good mom, but that she's been a busy mom, a workaholic mom, right? And so you could have weaved that narrative thread, but instead we just get this. And this brings us to the end of the song, where we don't feel like we've gone on a journey because we're just repeating the same sentiment of the course without the impact of brand new information or revelations changing the course's meaning. Like, the bridge is supposed to be when the characters make a final decision and, like, has the suspension of that choice, and then a course happening again. It's like, okay, the course is happening again, but it has a new meaning because we know that the character has made a choice. But there is no reason for them both to be singing. There was no decision made here that wasn't already made in their respective verses. So all of this said, what is the fatal flaw of this song? I mentioned at the beginning that we have a boring instrumental, no musical theater reactions, no dynamics, terrible structure, terrible rhymes, and just no point. It fails on every level, but what is the actual nucleus or source of the issue here? And before I reveal it, I just want to thank all my patrons and my YouTube membership members who I mentioned at the beginning of the video for supporting me. If you want to get early access to my content and allow me to continue to create in the first place, please consider joining them. If you want me to make a video about any song you want, you can check out my commissions on Ko-fi and get me to talk this long about your hyperfixation. I also have songwriting consulting commissions open where you can send me your song and I can provide you insight on how to improve it, but think closer to what Welcome to Rosas and Happy Day in Hell was, but for your own personal use, like giving you feedback line by line, but I'm assuming that your song will have more redeemable sentiments than this one, which is a big compliment because these people got paid to do this. Anyway, at the end of my videos, I try to have like, oh, a revelation that'll change your life, and I try to give at least like 10 of those when I'm consulting. So imagine a video, but like a video on steroids, you know what I'm saying? And now that we got all of that out of the way, what is the fatal flaw of this song? This is what I think really killed the song, and it's very similar to At All Costs, where I think that this is more of a creative team problem compared to a problem with the actual song, if that makes sense, or its content. We don't get to peel back the layers of who Vaggie presents herself as versus who she actually is or was in the past, because they were just so determined to keep this a secret from the audience, and they sacrificed the narrative to do so. At All Costs ended up standing alone because Julia Michaels was quoted as writing it to be that way on purpose, which goes against the very idea of what musical theater is supposed to do. And this song is the exact same case. This is not what a musical theater song is supposed to do or be, and as a result, we fail before we can even start. That is the nucleus for all these other failures. I can talk about bad structure and the fact that they don't go on the same journey or a journey at all and all of that stuff all I want, but when you get really down to it, the problem is that they were not willing to have these characters share their heart and soul with us. There was an opportunity for more clarity to make us care, especially in relation to Vaggie, but they did not take it because they wanted to keep her backstory a secret shock reveal for the later episodes. You can make us care about a character like Carmilla in a single song, but you have to be willing to share their feelings with the audience and give us a reason to root for them. And especially with Vaggie, I just don't think that they were willing. They did not want to reveal the angel thing now, despite the fact that right now is the best time to do so and would have made the most sense. If they had been allowed to do their job correctly as musical theater songwriters and storytellers, this song should have been unskippable. It should not be so vague that the people that listen to this song out of context have no idea what's going on or why this matters or why they should care. The reason why this song is so bad is because no one had interest, or rather, I think that they had no say in doing their actual job here. Basically, I don't think it was actually the songwriters' fault this time. I don't think that this was up to them. I feel like they were not trusted enough to handle this information, and that's really detrimental to the rest of the show. All the important details for 99% of the episodes are in the script, and the songs are arbitrarily inserted in twice an episode just for the sake of it. And I have no behind-the-scenes knowledge or anything like that, but this is just my observation based on what we have seen. Like, this is my personal theory and conclusion that the songwriters were not allowed to step on the toes of the script writers. And this is despite the fact that the songwriters are writing the script. The songs are part of the script. They wanted to have their cake and eat it too, keeping Vaggie's backstory a secret even though it is detrimental to the song and the entire narrative afterwards because of it. And it does feel disrespectful in a way because the team claims that they're inspired and have this deep love for Broadway and musicals and whatever, but every single song is like, well, we don't want to make this too important or else people won't be able to listen to it on Spotify without watching the show. What if someone listens to the song and they hear a spoiler, right? Despite the fact that that would be their own fault if that happened, right? You can't create a musical if you do not want to give the songwriters the opportunity to do their best and tell the story. So if you've been wondering why Whatever It Takes makes me so mad after me alluding to it all this time, this is why. It's a song that represents the deeper problems of the show and how they treat the musical aspect of their musical most of the time, which is as an afterthought instead of the medium of delivery. It doesn't feel like they wanted Hazbin to be a musical because they felt like it was the best way to tell this story. It feels like they wanted it to be a musical because it would be funny to have a number that sounds like a bargain bin Disney princess song and have the princess say fuck. I don't want people to misunderstand, even though they will anyway, but I do think that there are songs in the show that are good. It's just that the longer that time goes by from when I first reacted to it on my main channel with Hunter, the more cynical I feel about the show. Musical theater is a team sport, and if you aren't willing to be a team player, you shouldn't be making one. We don't throw in songs because it's fun, we throw in those songs because we think that they are integral for the narrative. But with Hazbin, half of the time they are just for fun. They don't give us anything. And I feel like that it's not fair to throw the songwriters under the bus just so you can have the glory of your little twists and your little tee-hees in the later episodes, because that's not in the spirit of collaboration. Making the songs take the brunt of this was bad for the narrative, this was so boring, blah, 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 criticism is really unfair when it's not the songs that are boring. It's your story that is boring because you will not let the songs progress it properly. But if you actually want to see me fix one of Hazbin Hotel's songs, please check out my Happy Day in Hell video. It's a lot more constructive than this because at least they wanted to try to tell a story in the opening number in that song. At least I think they did. But this video was practically impossible for me to do in my usual format because I can't fix this song. It's just like at all costs. Like I can't fix something that wasn't an earnest attempt at trying to tell the story in the first place. And again, with here, I feel like that it's not the songwriter's fault despite all the other like weird, you know, flaws in their writing sometimes. Like I feel like that they just weren't allowed. And so in rewrite land, to me, we have to start all over because the thesis and everything else was built on a false premise of trying to keep secrets. If we had a version where Vaggie was allowed to reveal her entire backstory, the thesis of the song may change radically, which is why, again, I don't think we can rewrite this. I love talking about how we can go in and make a song stronger because I think it can help you guys make your own work stronger. But with this, I can't really give advice to something that wasn't even an honest attempt at telling the story in the first place, other than like try to tell the story next time. So this has been Calxiyn caring way too much, and I hope you care too, and I will see you next time. Bye!